So I want to get to, because we've had a couple of questions in the chat. So I want to get to some of, I think some of them I've talked about already, I think. But there's one I know that I missed from earlier, which was talking about war and how war affects local governments' economic difficulties. I imagine there's maybe quite a bit to say about that topic, but do you have any insight into how the war is affecting the economics of these local governments?
So of course it depends on the location of the local government. So if we are talking about local governments near Gaza, where the events of October 7th actually took place, there were mostly, what we talked about earlier, there were mostly villages within the regional council of it's called the Eshkol Council. This is the name of this region that were affected. There were not a lot of cities, some, but not a lot of cities that were affected. There were Ofakim or Sderot, but many of the local governments affected by the war in the south were villages, and they are still evacuated. Those villages are still evacuated. They are ruined physically. There are some people there, but it's not a functioning local government. In the north, where there were strikes from the Hezbollah, villages and cities were evacuated, and now the government called the residents to return. When there was evacuation, then there was nothing there, of course. There were cities and villages that were not in the perimeter of evacuations, but still residents evacuated because they didn't want to be in the range of the missiles, because there was a period of, I think, 1 year or more that there were everyday missiles from the Hezbollah, so people naturally wanted to move to the center. These cities now, residents more and more are coming back, still very much fearful, but they're coming back. And I think these local governments are recovering. There is some help of the central government. Many people say it's not enough help. People are very critical of the central government in how it helps the rehabilitation and how much funds are invested in the rehabilitation of those cities. But for the cities in the center, of course, the war affected, but not as much as you would think, I would say. Because businesses, there is not much tourism, of course, but the economy, the local economy, which is not really about tourism, it's more about the Israeli internal economy is still good. So the central local governments were not very much affected. They still had to deal with constant sirens and missiles falling, but usually those missiles are intercepted in the air, so there is no concrete damage. This is, I think, the division of how local governments deal with the war, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And location obviously is very important in terms of what the effects are. Okay, so we had another question in the chat. So I'm going to read it. It's a little bit long, but so in the context of Israeli local governments, there appear to be three main strategies to cope with financial distress. One, requesting additional funding from the central government, which raises questions about the source of the support, whether it is ultimately drawn from the local constituency or from national level grants. Two, reducing the scope or quality of public services, since there are no legally mandated minimum service standards. However, this approach can entail significant political costs, or 3, implementing efficiency programs aimed at optimizing resource use and improving financial stability. So the questions, is this understanding accurate? Are there additional mechanisms or constraints that should be considered?
So these 3 strategies are correct in the eyes of the local government itself. So it's kind of before the intervention, if it occurs, of the central government, and this is absolutely true. But I would say the following: what the first strategy was to increase the support of the central government. This is true, but it is very political. So some mayors, which are politically connected, can increase the support of the central government, can increase the grants. Others cannot, because they are not politically connected. So it's a strategy that applies to few, I would say, or to some local governments. There is no minimum basket of local goods and services, but mayors, of course, due to political reasons, don't like to reduce the quality of the local services. In some cases, it is inevitable, but it's, mayors would try to avoid that at almost all costs. And the third is efficiency. This is, I think, where the central government comes in. So cities really try to increase, where possible, the amount of tax collection, the amount of their tax collections. It's a problem because really the central government controls the rate of the tax, but the rate of the tax, the property tax, depends on the type of assets. So commercial assets are paying, residents with commercial assets are paying much more in property taxes. So local governments can try and are trying to attract as much as possible commercial assets to the local government. This is a strategy, but efficiency in terms of cutting costs for management and cutting costs in superfluous popular expenses. This also, in most places, it really doesn't really happen.
Thank you. And so one last question I think we have time for, and it's also in the chat. So can the intervention agents, for example, sell off assets? Is that a possibility?
Yes, in terms of authority, definitely it's a possibility. I don't know how much it's actually done because most of the local assets are actually needed. But what they can do, and they actually do, is in terms of planning and zoning, convert green areas that that don't pay property. You cannot collect property taxes on to residential areas or to commercial areas where you can collect more property taxes. So this can be done. And also, there are limits because there is the city level and the regional level and the central level of planning and zoning. So you have to play within the rules. But yeah, they do whatever they can to increase revenues. Definitely.
Do whatever they can to get the job done.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I really want to thank you, Omer, and this has been so enlightening and so just fascinating from multiple angles. So I really, really appreciate all of your knowledge, all of your insight, and thanks to all of you for joining our conversation today. We will be posting, I think, clips to our YouTube channel, so please spread the word in case I know there were others that wanted to come and weren't able to come. But thank you so much, Omer.